Act 1, The Road. The road into the city had 2 lanes, a row of sun-bleached billboards, and a single olive tree that somehow refused to die. Nadia saw it first as a smear on the horizon through the bus window, an older tree than the road itself, trunk twisted from decades of wind, roots drinking dust. Every route in and out of this place had a landmark, a rusted crane, a mural of a blue horse, the skeleton of a half-built bridge. This route had the olive tree and a checkpoint that felt like a throat tightening. The driver slowed. Everyone reached for IDs. Nadia smoothed hers with her thumb and watched her own picture look back, mid-20s, eyes a little too direct, hair pulled into a knot she had done without thinking. She had been a teacher once. Now she was a coordinator for an aid group that delivered flour, antibiotics, and arguments to people who needed all 3. The bus hissed to a stop. A soldier climbed aboard. He had the unnerving posture of someone who had been trained to enter rooms where doors had decided to lie, shoulders broad under fabric that did not want to be armor. He scanned, collected, returned. When he reached Nadia's row, his gaze caught on the notebook under her hand. "What's that?" he asked. "My memory," she said. "What I need to buy. What we delivered. Who yelled at me on Tuesday." He didn't smile, but his mouth softened. "Tuesday is a good day for yelling." "It's democratic," she said. "Everyone gets a turn." He handed back her ID and gestured toward the window. "You know that tree?" "I'm a romantic," she said. "I tell myself the roots keep track of who passes." "Or it's just a tree," he said. "Or," she agreed. He moved on. The bus exhaled and rolled forward, and Nadia's heart took a second longer to follow. Act 2, Olive. 2 weeks later, the checkpoint moved 30 meters closer to the tree. Nadia arrived with a truck full of sacks and a letter signed by someone important enough to get signatures. She wore a high-visibility vest because bureaucracy believed in neon. A different soldier checked the papers and then wandered off to find a stamp from a man who always seemed to be on a break. Nadia leaned against the truck, closed her eyes, and counted backwards from 30 for anger to disperse. She felt someone step into her shade. It was the soldier from the bus. The one with the not smile. He had an olive between his fingers, small, hard, the kind you eat only after time has taught it the language of brine. "From the tree?" she asked. He shook his head. "From a crate a farmer smuggled through declaring them decorative stones." He popped it into his mouth, winced at the salt, and grinned. He had a good grin, it looked like permission. "You keep them at the checkpoint?" Nadia asked. "In the tower, in a jar labeled, 'Do not eat.' It's a very effective label." Nadia watched him chew, eyes creasing. "What's your name?" "Yusuf," he said. "Yours?" "Nadia." He tapped the truck. "You bring more than flour?" "Advice," she said. "No one wants it." "Then it's good advice," he said. He glanced at the cab. "Your mirror is loose." "I know," she said. "I've been convincing it to stay with compliments." "Bring it by tomorrow," he said. "I'll fix it." She looked at the olive tree because the world had a sense of humor. "Is that allowed?" "No," he said. But the tree asked nicely. Act 3, Fix. She brought the truck the next day, the mirror held temporarily with tape and hope. Yusuf waved her through to the maintenance bay, which was also a storage room, which was also a place where men pretended not to notice each other's tender hearts. He fetched a toolkit and a length of wire that had previously belonged to something military. "It's better if we call this community security," he said. "If anyone asks." "They'll ask," Nadia said. "They always ask," he agreed. "That's how we invent answers." He worked with neat economy, the kind that comes from a childhood spent fixing things whose owners had given up on them. Nadia watched his hands, scarred in small ways, knuckles scuffed, nails disagreed with. The mirror settled into steadiness. "Payment," he said, holding out his palm. When she raised an eyebrow, he added quickly, "A story. I collect them." "Which kind?" she asked. "The kind you tell when you're waiting for water to boil." Nadia thought. "When I was 7, she said, my father taught me to ride a bicycle. He believed in momentum, not brakes. I crashed into a fig tree and cried until the neighbor brought me a plate of sliced fruit and said, 'If you eat the tree that hurt you, you will make peace with it.' I don't know if that's true. But I have been eating figs aggressively ever since." Yusuf laughed. "Your neighbor would get along with our olive jar." "My turn," she said, offering her palm. "Payment." He considered. "When I was 10, he said, I wanted to be a diver. I had never seen the sea. I practiced in the irrigation canal behind my uncle's house. The water was 2 meters if you lied. I would hold my breath and count. My uncle shouted that I would drown. I believed him and did it anyway. The first time I saw the sea for real I was 19, on the back of a truck, sent to guard an empty beach as if the horizon might invade. Sometimes I think I joined the army to stand closer to a color I didn't understand. Nadia stared at him and said, because her mouth did that sometimes, and now you meet women at checkpoints and fix their mirrors. And now, he agreed, I meet women at checkpoints and fix their mirrors. The mirror held. The world did not. They both pretended not to know this. Act 4, Truce. News came down like weather, a 3-day ceasefire to allow convoys through, to give families time to find each other, to let the city remember what it felt like to unclench. The checkpoint lowered its rifles and raised an awning. Someone strung a shade cloth between the olive and a floodlight. Children gathered with balls, they bounced with the manic joy of permitted noise. Nadia set up a table for water distribution. Yusuf directed traffic with a whistle he used to annoy and relieve in equal measure. An old woman arrived with a bag of lemons and declared herself in charge of deciding who looked too pale. She pointed at Yusuf. You? Pale. Sit. My commanding officer would disagree, he said. I outrank your officer, she replied, and handed him a lemon. Nadia poured water for anyone with a container, plastic bottles, a tin cup, a ceramic mug with a chip shaped like a small bite. The heat filched patience from faces. People invented politeness because it was cheaper than anger. The olive tree offered shadow-like advice. In the lull, Nadia and Yusuf stood on opposite sides of the table and let silence do the intimate work. He sliced his lemon with a knife that had a personality. She watched him squeeze it into his water and thought about mouths and what they learned to say when war tried to teach them other lessons. 3 days, she said. What would you do if you had 3 days without orders? Sleep in a bed that recognizes me, he said. Eat bread that doesn't argue. Stand in the sea until I forget my knees. You could get to the coast in 5 hours if the roads stop lying. And you? He asked. Nadia's mouth curved. Find the woman who used to live inside me and ask her what she wanted before she learned to want less. He nodded once, as if cataloging a promise. If we both survive this week, he said, let me buy you tea. Not checkpoint tea. Tea with chairs that don't fold. It's a date with a lowercase d, she said. It can graduate later, he replied. Act 5, Fire. On the second night of the ceasefire, someone made a mistake 10 kilometers north and the news burned faster than anything that actually burned. The checkpoint tensed like a body hearing footsteps behind it. Radio snapped. A rumor tripped over itself and called itself fact. The sky stayed clear and still everything tilted. A truck swerved too fast into the lane and clipped the concrete barrier. There was a grunt of metal and a gasp of people. The driver's head hit the wheel. Nadia ran with her kid. Yusuf ran with his mouth saying the calm words he had been trained to pull out of thin air. They reached the truck door together. The driver, a man with a pioneer's beard and a child's fear, blinked as his brain returned. I'm okay, he said. Men say this when they are not. Hands, Nadia said, and his hands listened. She checked for bleeding, for breaks, for the things that hide beneath bravado. Yusuf assessed the barrier, the angle, the risk of everything becoming heat. A teenager hopped down from the truck bed, clutching a box of chickens like a verse. The chickens commented on politics loudly. The teenager's eyes were pools at night. Please, he said, to anyone and everyone. We've got him, Yusuf said. The words had edges but they were the soft kind. Nadia dabbed at a cut on the man's temple and kept her voice steady. Name? Rafiq, he said. Rafiq, you didn't stop, she said. What did you think would happen? I thought it would not happen to me, he said, which is what people think until the road removes their illusions. He looked at Yusuf. Are you going to write me a fine? Yusuf snorted softly. A fine is for a world where paper matters more than people. Take a breath like you believe in lungs. We will sort the barrier. Nadia watched them and thought, I know this posture, when a man pretends he is the same as yesterday because it's harder to become the person accident makes you. They moved the barrier with muscle and a borrowed crowbar. The truck limped to the side. The teenager whispered to the chickens as if naming each feather. A woman brought bandages from a purse that had carried better things. The ceasefire held by sheer public will. Later, under the awning, Yusuf sat with his back to the pole and stared at his hands. Nadia squatted next to him with a bottle of water. Drink, she said. I keep waiting for someone to come yell at me, he said. For letting the barrier be soft. Let them, she said. I'll yell back. He smiled without lifting his head. Do you always pick fights with windmills? Only when they pretend to be dragons, she said. He looked up. He said, like a prayer and a plan. She echoed, like both. Act 6, After. The ceasefire ended the way lullabies do, suddenly, and with tired children. The awning came down. The shade cloth folded into a square. The lemon woman left with her bag lighter and her authority intact. The checkpoint resumed its posture like a man putting his armor back on because someone might be watching. Nadia's truck waited for inspection. Yusuf's hands waited for a job that wasn't talking. They were saying goodbye when a convoy of armored vehicles rolled past, carrying men with mirrors for eyes. Dust rose like a curtain. When it settled, the olive tree seemed smaller. Be careful, Nadia said. You as well, he replied. See you. When? She asked. When the weather allows, he said, and they both looked at the spotless sky with distrust. She drove away and the mirror he had fixed showed his figure diminishing, then gone. Act 7, The City. Days folded into days. Nadia distributed antibiotics that expired next month and rice that did not. She mediated arguments over generators like a priest in a town that had forgotten its saints. At night she washed her face with a cloth and thought about how a person becomes an idea inside another person's head, and whether that idea ever matches the body. On a Tuesday, someone knocked on her apartment door, a place rented by 4 friends and 7 plants. She opened it to a woman with hair braided like a map. Are you Nadia? The woman asked. I could be, Nadia said carefully. I'm Talia, the woman said. Yusuf's sister. You have his eyes, Nadia said, and then realized that sounded like an accusation. Talia laughed. We take turns. She stepped inside and held out a plastic container. My mother sent this. It's dessert. She believes in sugar as a diplomatic tool. Nadia accepted the weight gratefully. Is he? He's fine, Talia said. He's bad at text messages. He's excellent at unscrewing stubborn lids. He says you are ferocious in the right direction, which is the highest compliment in our family. Nadia's face did something unprofessional. He said that? Talia nodded. He also said, tell her I will be where the road becomes a rumor at noon on Friday if noon exists. He talks like that. Nadia laughed for the first time that week like it belonged to her. Act 8, Tea. The cafe had chairs that didn't fold. They were mismatched on purpose and each one had a scar that made it interesting. The owner had painted the walls the color of second chances. Friday's noon did exist and brought Yusuf, hair damp from washing, shirt ironed by a person who believed in dignity, eyes that recognized without claiming. They sat in the corner and pretended not to notice how much they were noticing. Tea, he said. Tea, she agreed. They talked like people who knew that words could be both bridge and weapon. About small things, a recipe for lentil soup that fooled children into joy, a stray dog that had adopted a whole market, a radio show at night that played music from a time when drums did not mean warning. They avoided the geography of the city like it was a wound. Do you ever get tired of being strong? He asked, not as a trap, but as an invitation. Yes, she said. Do you ever get tired of pretending not to be afraid? Every hour, he said. Same, she said. He reached into his pocket and set a small object on the table, a metal washer, smoothed by fingers, a makeshift coin from a checkpoint maintenance drawer. For your mirror, he said. A spare. For your pocket, she said, sliding it back. A reminder that some things can be tightened without breaking. He closed his hand around it as if it were a hand in return. The cafe hummed, steam, laughter, plates. Outside, the city rehearsed hope. They let themselves imagine a future threaded with these small permissions: tea on Fridays, the olive tree refusing to learn extinction, a road that would one day be only a road. Act 9, Break. The next week, the road forgot how to be kind. Nadia's convoy hit a delay that wasn't an accident. Men with mirrors for eyes asked for papers Nadia did not have because no one had invented them yet. Voices frayed. Someone reached for the wrong tool. It spiraled the way events do when pride and fear are allowed in the same room. Yusuf arrived late into the chaos, called by a radio that used his name like an order. He saw the tangle, sacks of flour, men with guns, Nadia's stance like a wire between 2 poles, and did the math only trained bodies do. What he could say, what he could do, what he could risk, and still be the same person when he woke tomorrow. Enough, he said, and his voice had the authority of someone who could fix mirrors and also not shoot you. This convoy is cleared. If you have a problem, write it down and tuck it into the earth. A man with a thin mustache who liked to bark for sport sneered. Since when do you decide? Since I am the only person here who knows which bolt keeps this barrier from turning into a spear, he said. Stand down. The man stood down because sometimes that is the easiest way to feel important later. Nadia loaded the last sack herself, shoulders shaking not from weight but from the effort of not undoing in public. Yusuf walked beside her without touching. They reached the olive tree and stopped because the road had stopped and the world had decided this was the place to make a point. I can't keep doing this, she said, and the sentence contained all possible reference. I know, he said. I don't mean the work, she said. I mean the part where I remember I am a person only when I'm with you, and then the road reminds me I am a function. He leaned his head back against the bark as if asking the tree for translation. I don't know how to be a person in a uniform, he said. I'm learning. She looked at him like a mirror that had been repaired by a patient hand. Then let's learn together, she said. Slow, small. Tea on Fridays. Calls when the radio sleep. The sea one day. It doesn't have to be righteous. It can be ordinary. He closed his eyes, opened them, nodded. Ordinary is the bravest word I know. Act 10, Ordinary. They were not heroes. They were not the couple a city wrote songs about when the shooting stopped. They were two people who built a routine that survived news cycles, tea on Fridays, a walk by the river where fishermen still argued about hooks, a jar at Nadia's place for the washers Yusuf collected, each one a reminder that improvisation can be an ethic. They had fights that did not involve ideology, who forgot to buy bread, who used the last of the good soap, who left the window open when the dust moved like an occupying force. They learned to apologize in ways the other believed. They learned to make a bed between alarms. Some days Nadia wanted to throw her vest into the sea. Some days Yusuf wanted to mail his uniform to a museum with a note, display as, the wrong skin. On those days, they met under the olive tree and let the silence do the first kindness. They did not promise forever. They promised Friday. When the city finally held an election without sirens, people danced on the road and kissed strangers and tied ribbons to the tree until it looked like a festival. Nadia and Yusuf stood at the edge and let joy be louder than caution. He leaned in and said against her hair, "Marry me without ceremony." She said, "I'll marry you with an omelette and a nap," which was the same sentence wearing softer clothes. They married in a courtyard with a cat as witness and a neighbor as DJ. The olive tree was too far to attend. Someone placed a branch on the table anyway, and Yusuf made a joke about contraband botany that made the lemon woman cry. Years turned and did what they do. The jar of washers filled. The city learned how to argue about taxes again, a luxury it had missed. The road became a road so thoroughly that children forgot to be proud of it. One evening, past sunset, they drove out toward the edge where the billboards had faded into abstract art and the olive tree stood in silhouette like a stubborn letter in a language no one wrote anymore. They parked. Yusuf turned off the engine. "Listen," he said. "To what?" she asked. "To nothing," he said. "To the kind of quiet that means no one is planning how to break what we love." They sat without speaking for a long time, letting the dark make them honest. Nadia took his hand. He squeezed. The mirror he had fixed years ago still held, vibrating slightly with leftover motion. "Do you think the tree keeps track of us?" she asked. "I think we keep track of ourselves near it," he said. "Same," she said. They drove back with the windows down, the air doing that thing where it gathers a whole life and tosses it through the car like confetti you don't have to sweep. They didn't need a landmark to tell them they were home. But they liked having one anyway. Because love in a place that has taught you to expect alarms is not fireworks, it is scheduling tea and showing up. It is staying softer than your orders. It is learning the names of bolts and the verbs that make people exhale. It is choosing, again and again, an ordinary courage. And sometimes it is an olive tree at a checkpoint that doesn't exist anymore, the memory of a grin like permission, the feel of a washer in a pocket, the way a mirror holds steady when the road forgets itself. For anyone listening, the road is only a road now. Visibility, good. Compass, true enough. Lantern, optional. Good night. Good morning.